Well, hello there, watching the press preview. A first look then at what is on the front pages, live here from Downing Street. Time to see what's making the headlines with the Observer's chief leader writer, Sonia Soda, and the Daily Mail's deputy political editor, John Stevens. Welcome to both of you, here with us from now until just before midnight. So let's take a look, shall we, at the front pages. And the Financial Times focusing on what Liz Truss will have to do to get to grips with the energy crisis. The Metro quotes from her arrival speech, "We can ride out the storm," the paper says. The Telegraph carries those same words. And that is also the lead for the Express. "Together we can ride out the storm." The Guardian says Ms Truss has vowed to solve the cost of living crisis. While on the front of the eye, economists say taxpayers and consumers will have to pay for the incoming government's economic programme. And the Mirror responding to the challenges faced by the new government, declaring, "Now fix the Britain you lot broke." Well, quick reminder, by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers while you watch us and listen to our guests. So let's go to Sonia and John with the thoughts. First of all, John, you could kick it off with the words, outside, everyone knew the weather could be a problem here, but she finally got outside. The words then of Liz Truss outside Downing Street.
So a lot of her speech was talking about a perfect storm, and we saw that perfectly illustrated. We saw her from the skycopter driving around and around, doing weird loops around this part of London. I think it's possible that they were hoping that the rain would ease off before she came here. They crossed over Vauxhall Bridge and then back over Westminster Bridge, and it's just like, I don't know where she's going, whether she's going back to Balmoral, is she coming to Downing Street? She eventually got here, people put down their umbrellas, and she was able to give that speech to the nation. And the key theme was clearly about she's going to get the country through this storm that is the energy crisis, and saying how she's going to come forward with her plan to help people with their bills on Thursday this week.
Absolutely. There's so much work to be done. We've seen it already underway tonight. The cabinet appointments, some of them in the last half hour or so. Will there be a cabinet committee meeting tomorrow? Will it be then that they hear the plans before they're announced, perhaps a day later? Is that the schedule?
I think it will be something like that, Anna. And when you look at the cabinet that she's put together, there's a couple of things that stand out. One is that she's really promoted heavily her backers. Now, of course, in some ways you would expect that, but she didn't win by quite the margin that people were expecting. So I think there may have been some on the Tory backbenches that thought she should have given a few more seats at the cabinet table, perhaps to people who supported her competitors. She hasn't chosen to do that. And it's going to be interesting to see if that means that she gets to run a tighter ship, or whether there's going to be a lot of big beasts on the backbenches who sort of rally against her. So I think we'll be seeing the consequence of that. But it's all about this energy package, isn't it? What it's going to say. There's been a lot of speculation in the press yesterday and today. We haven't got the details. Some very big price tags going on it. The household bit's meant to cost at least 100 billion, another 40 to 60 billion for businesses potentially and public services. So these are really big ticket items, and it's very different to what she was saying during the Conservative leadership contest.
Absolutely. Ride out the storm, been picked up, as you saw, by many of the newspapers. The suggestion possibly was that the energy price freeze would kick in at about £2,500. £400 is being paid also to people, that announcement by Rishi Sunak earlier this year. Is that what you're hearing? What more details can you share with us of what we're likely to hear on that?
I think that is right, that they are going to fix the energy price cap. For average households, that was, at the moment, it's about £1,900. Was due to go up to about £3,600 in October. They'll fix it at £2,500. And as you say, you'll get that £400 of extra help. So it's almost the same as it is now, just slightly higher. So that will make a big difference to people. But that's obviously going to cost a lot of money. And we've seen a complete change of tact from Liz Truss. It's only a couple of weeks ago that she was saying that tax cuts was the way that she was going to deal with this, that she was going to do her reversal of the rise in national insurance, that she's going to look at corporation tax, which obviously affects businesses instead, but that she was against handouts. And now we're seeing her spending absolutely vast sums of money. I think that's just because she's realised there's no other way to deal with this, that if the Tories went into the next election with people having electricity and gas bills that were up to something like £4,500, £5,000 by the next election, people just can't cope with that. And I think that's why she's realised realistically, you do actually need to take something that's very significant in the way you act.
Yes, and business closures, failures as well has been a real problem. So there's the front of the FT then. Truss assumes office with the vow to steer Britain out of the energy storm. The question is how will the markets react? The eye beginning to pick up on that. Truss era begins with a tax warning. Can you add a cutting taxation to the amount of borrowing it looks like you're going to do? What happens to the pound? What therefore happens to interest rates? Economically, this is... There's no prediction yet how this will go.
It's huge uncertainty, and I think, we've weathered quite a few financial crises as a country over the last 15 years or so. There's a 2008 financial crisis. The financial impact of the COVID pandemic was obviously huge, but this is even bigger. That's what a lot of economists are saying, and I think the impact that it's going to have on us in the long term, on the long-term structure of the economy, on long-term interest rates, nobody really knows yet. I think a big question for Truss and her agenda, we've just been talking about it, is that so now we've got maybe 100 billion plus on the table in terms of support to households and hopefully to businesses as well. But she won this Conservative leadership election by promising a hugely expensive programme of tax cuts. Economists think that her tax cuts could cost upwards of £50 billion a year. And it's kind of a bit like, how do you make these things sit together? Because when you look at the NHS, when you look at schools, they need more money, more government spending, not less, because they're facing the same pressures as everyone else. Wage inflation, they've got to find money for teachers' salaries out of their own budgets. The government's not stumping up for it. And rising energy bills. And the NHS and schools are big consumers of energy. So how do you do massive tax cuts just at a time when public services need more money to keep running?
Well, we managed to catch a chat with Jacob Rees-Mogg, who was delighted to be given the role of Business Secretary. He's already been, we know, in those discussions with some of the energy companies to try and lock down this plan, if we can put it like that. Where do you see Liz Truss? Because Sir Bernard Jenkins was certainly saying today that she's literally got a couple of weeks and that could make or break her premiership. Do you see it like that?
I think that's exactly it, and that's why she's come out so quickly with the plan. I mean, we have been waiting all summer for the Tories to get on with their leadership contest so we can work out what help people are going to get. But that's why you have seen her fly straight down here from Balmoral, say that she is going to announce her plan on Thursday and that they're going to come straight out the traps with that. I think if they'd waited any longer, then there'd been much more criticism of them.
It's difficult for her, though, isn't it? She's talking about growth when a recession is predicted. She talked in her speech that we can see there about prosperity for younger generations, when it could well be they're saddled with even more borrowing debt. This is, these are tight times. The words are not going to match probably what she has to do.
It's a hugely challenging economic time. So you've got the really acute crisis, the Ukraine energy crisis that's been caused by the war in Ukraine. You've got really long-term issues in the UK, actually. Our productivity growth has been the second slowest in the G7 since 2008. And that's because, I think, a lack of investment in skills, infrastructure, all that kind of stuff. And then we've got a massive housing crisis as a country. And you've got growing numbers of people in their 20s and 30s who will just never get to own their own home and will be renting for all their life. It's really hard to see how the government is going to sort that stuff out when we've got this very acute energy crisis. That, one of the most worrying things about it is we don't know if it's going to be over next year or the year after. It all depends on how long the war in Ukraine goes on.
Well, a bit of a word there from the Daily Mirror. Now fix the Britain you lot broke. Truss enters number 10, full of promises, just like the last three Tory PMs. I nearly said MPs there. There have been that many, haven't there? Well, welcome back. You're watching the press preview with me once again, Sonia Soda and John Stevens. Welcome back, both of you. Vicky Ford has just left and got what role?
She's Minister of State at the Foreign Office, looking at international development. So
we're already at the stage where ministers are being appointed. She really is rattling through. So let's talk in more detail, shall we, about who is in and who is out. Certainly some big names falling by the wayside, including the former Deputy Prime Minister, Dominic Raab. But who's in and the importance of some of those faces there, that for the first time ever, the top four great offices of state are not held by a white man.
Yeah, and it's quite incredible, actually, when you take a step back and look at it. We've got two black men in two of the great offices of state, as in the Treasury and as Foreign Secretary. And then we've got Suella Braverman, an Asian woman, as Home Secretary. And then we've got a woman as Health Secretary and Deputy Prime Minister. So I think for the first time in our history, we've got a female Prime Minister and a female Deputy Prime Minister. And, obviously, that's quite separate from their politics and what you think of their politics. But I do think it's very striking when you look at the diversity of the cabinet that she's pulled together. And I think there'll probably be some people in Labour looking at that and feeling a little bit uncomfortable, because the Labour Party does not have the best track record when it comes to putting women and people of colour in senior positions.
Yes, we know, don't we? Now, we were used to resets of the organisation of Downing Street under Boris Johnson, many of them forced upon him, of course. That has also happened today, has it not? You know, a big change in the way she runs things, suggestions that more will be devolved to the cabinet departments. Is that what you've seen so far?
I think so, and you have seen a big change in the ministers. All of those people who were close to Rishi Sunak, they're basically all gone. I think it's a possibility that by the end of the night, we only have one person who supported Rishi Sunak around the cabinet table. We're expecting that to be Michael Ellis, the Attorney General. We think that's the job he's going to get. But she has had a real clear out. All those people, we expected people like Dominic Raab to go. He said that her economic plans were an electoral suicide note. So there's no way he could have carried on serving. But people like Grant Shapps, the Transport Secretary, we think he was quite hopeful that he would have managed to cling on in there. But no, they've all been cleared out. They've all gone. And also quite surprising when you think about the result of this leadership contest. Liz Truss won with 57.4%, which is a perfectly good result. But it's not really overwhelming. It's less than Boris Johnson got. It's less than IDS got. It's less than David Cameron got. And so for her to kind of really stamp her authority and say, I'm in charge now, I'm picking people who are loyal to me, then it's a bit of a surprise that she's gone so far when she didn't actually win by such a big margin.
Well, there's only one winner, isn't there? There's only one person who would get on that plane, fly to Balmoral to meet the Queen. The Sun picks up on that. Hello, Liz, as both of them say that to each other, obviously.
Maybe even at the same time.
Absolutely, the kissing of hands, which isn't really a kissing of hands.
It's a shaking
the moment,
of hands.
Yes, the moment when
quite
you become
awkward
Prime
otherwise,
Minister.
wouldn't it?
Just 30 seconds left for both of you. Top priority for the new administration. Sonia, first, quickly.
It's got to be cost of living, but I think social care is a really big one too.
John?
I think clearly it is energy, but you look at how much importance she seems to be putting on the health service, making Theresa Coffey Deputy Prime Minister and Health Secretary. She mentioned a lot about health, but it's less clear how you manage to sort those problems out. There isn't a load of excess money around. You can't really throw money at the problem. And saying things like, we're going to cut bureaucracy, people always say that, but it's not really a magic wand to get people to be able to see their GP.